Okay, welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Sean Pinney. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Opsgenie, and I'm happy to be joined by Serhat John, who is a technical evangelist here at Opsgenie as well. And today we're talking all things Opsgenie and AWS Lambda, so it should be a really cool discussion. Serhat is the technical evangelist, as I mentioned, and really an expert in all these things and how you can kind of use different tools to kind of enhance and to work in collaboration with your Opsgenie account. So we're going to dive in and have a good conversation and some actual live demo as well. So the agenda, I'm going to turn it over to Serhat here in a minute, but we're going to talk quickly about, just high level for anyone who might be new to it in terms of what is serverless and AWS Lambda. We'll give you some good examples of how to use it and the benefits of using it with Opsgenie, with your Opsgenie account. And then we'll dive into some custom integrations, some specific use cases that we've seen customers and even ourselves using, and even more deeply into actual code examples and implementing into Slack as well. And throughout the way, we'll answer questions as well. So as you know, if you've joined any webinars that we've done, especially recently, we tend to get a lot of questions. We like having a lot of interaction on these webinars. So if you have questions, please do ask. There's a chat box in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. You can type your question in there at any time. We'll pause periodically, and I'll kind of MC it and ask the questions, and Serhat will provide us with all the great insights and answers. And with that, I'm going to switch the screen over to Serhat, and we will dive into it here.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, hang on one second.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Serverless on AWS. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And again, my name is Serhat, and I work as a technical evangelist here at Opsgenie. So today I'm going to start with the basics and explain why it makes sense to use AWS Lambda and give some cool example use cases within the time we have. And hope that you can use this knowledge while integrating Opsgenie with your custom code. And if you have any questions afterwards, also feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at srhdcn or on community.opsgenie.com. So let's get started. Okay, so first we will talk about the current cloud services available for you to run software. I will use the updated version of the famous pizza example. So in on-premises, it's like a homemade pizza made from scratch, and you do everything yourself. And an example is, of course, data center. And in infrastructure as a service, you share a kitchen with others. The utilities and oven are provided, but you make and cook the pizza yourself. And a great example is EC2 of AWS, for example. And in containers, you bring the pizza, but someone else uses your facility and cooks the pizza for you. And in platform as a service, you order a pizza for collection. Pizza place make and cook the pizza using their facilities. And a great example is Penguin or Heroku. And today our focus is in functions as a service. And in this one, you go to a pizzeria with some friends, and you order and then eat pizza made by the restaurant. You order drinks from the bar and they are made for you. An example is AWS Lambda. And in software as a service, on the other hand, you go to someone's house for a party, they provide the pizza and invite others around for you to meet. Conversations with the guests is still your responsibility. A great example, for example, is Opsgenie, of course. Opsgenie is a SaaS product. So a more technical way of explaining this is in infrastructure as a service, the deployment artifact is virtual machine, right? So you create virtual machines, and this means you configure machines, storage, networking, and the operating system. In container as a service, we have containers, and in containers, you run servers, you configure applications, and control scaling. While in functions as a service, you just run your code when it's needed. So far we talked about different abstraction levels, but didn't really explain why these abstractions matters. Now let's talk about why it makes sense to use a solution like AWS Lambda. So first reason is that we have less code to manage, and a lot of operational concerns that we normally have are now outsourced to AWS. They are no longer our problem. We don't need to provision or manage servers. we don't need to update operating system or language runtime. And if there's a problem in the underlying machine, it's no longer our problem. Updates and failovers are handled by the service, and a great example for this is you are running on AWS Lambda, and AWS take care of the famous, for example, meltdown and Spectre vulnerabilities. You didn't need to do anything, but you had to make the patches yourself if you were using EC2 and managing your own virtual machines. For the deployment, you create a zip file and upload it to the cloud provider. This is especially trivial if you have a small project, and you also have simple logging enabled and easy to use with CloudWatch for AWS, for example. All you have to do is to print the log statement, and you can go to the AWS console and see the logs within a minute or so. So another reason is to use for AWS Lambda is scalability. Although it has specific details, for simple usage, it's almost completely invisible to you. Nothing runs if you or the system you integrate with don't trigger your function to execute the code. Once your request counts increase, your functions starts running in parallel. You don't need to configure or take any action. Again, all of these are invisible to you. And this behavior affects the pricing in a way that benefits us. And this brings us to another reason why we should use AWS Lambda. So AWS is the real pay-as-you-go. What I mean by that is that you pay nothing if your code doesn't run. You don't pay for the hour, minute, or even second. You pay for each 100 milliseconds for running the code. And you can have 128 megabytes to 3 gigabytes of RAM. And also CPU also increases along with the RAM and pricing accordingly. And one of the best things is that we have 1 million free requests per month, which means we will probably not even gonna pay a cent for simple projects like I will show you today. So far we talked about the benefits of software serverless, and the benefits apply to all serverless computing providers. It's not just for AWS Lambda. And most well-known and used services out there is, of course, AWS Lambda. Also, Microsoft has Azure Functions. Google has Google Cloud Functions. IBM has IBM Cloud Functions. Auth0 offers Webtask, and we have some open source alternatives like Apache OpenWhisk and OpenFaaS. And feel free to use your own cloud provider for the examples provided here. So as the serverless provider, we will use AWS today, and it's AWS Lambda service. AWS Lambda, again, is the most well-known used serverless computing service out there. And you can develop in Python, Java, Go, Node.js, and C#. And different versions of these runtimes are also available, and more are added each year. And to run a function, you must trigger it. And one of the best things about AWS Lambda is its integrations with other AWS services. So AWS Lambda is integrated with more than 20 other services. And here in the image, I have listed some of the most important ones, and I'd like to talk about some of them very shortly. And first one is the most important one, and we will use this one today. It's API Gateway. It's used to create HTTP endpoints for your API. And you can create an API endpoint once you get a request, you can pass the payload to a Lambda function to run your code. Another important one is CloudWatch Events Trigger. You can use it to run like a cron job, like a schedule job. For example, you can run your functions every minute. You can also listen some DynamoDB table streams and trigger a Lambda function once you save or delete a file in S3 and more. Lots of different triggers are available from other AWS services. So far we talked about where serverless, or in other words, functional service stands among cloud computing offerings, its benefits, and AWS Lambda's features. So if we have a question right now, Sean, I can answer, or I will continue with the next part.
Yes, sir. I think you can keep going. Nothing yet, but I'm sure we'll get more questions as we get into the demos.
Okay. So the first question is why we write custom integrations or solutions. It is important to point out that the integrations available in Opsgenie are built and managed by Opsgenie. And over 200 tools are available there, and you can use the full power of Opsgenie's integrations framework to create your alerts. And if there's an integration for a tool, you should use it. It is the easiest and most powerful and, of course, recommended way. But sometimes you might want to have a very specific, use case and want to integrate with a tool that you developed or use internally. And in this case, you should use Opsgenie's capabilities and tools like webhooks, APIs, and maybe Marit. Often we see two different flows for these custom solutions. And either you take actions in Opsgenie, like creating or acknowledging an alert, or Opsgenie triggers your endpoint when a new action is taken so that you can run your code to take further actions. Again, I want to point out that these custom integrations solutions are different than the typical integrations we have. We don't have a documentation for these custom things, or our customer success team won't be able to help with debug and fix bugs for these codes. Though what we can do is to guide you to apply some best practices, like what we do here in this webinar. So let's look at two different ways of extending Opsgenie with custom code. And the first one is incoming. Incoming here means that you take actions in Opsgenie. You use Opsgenie's APIs and SDKs for this. And our API allows you to take almost all actions available on the web user interface, such as executing alert actions, creating and enabling integrations, or updating schedules, maybe escalations. And for the incoming one, obviously you can use whatever environment you want to run your code. But today we will use AWS Lambda, and our live demo will feature an example like this one. And the other way is outgoing. And this means that Opsgenie tells you that an alert action is taken so that you can run your code based on the alert data and the action. And we will see some use cases of this soon as well. And there are two ways that Opsgenie can trigger you. First one is webhook integration. You simply create a webhook integration and enter your HTTP endpoint in Opsgenie, and then Opsgenie makes an HTTP request with the necessary payload so that you can use the service and you want to run the code. And the second one is using Marit. And Marit is an integration server, and it makes it easy to create such integrations. And the downside of Marit compared to AWS Lambda is that you still install and manage something. But it is easy to use Opsgenie's supported libraries and use it for on-prem integrations and connect outside securely. So Marit also, it has a place. So you might want to check that out as well. And we had a pretty cool webinar last week or so about this. And it's available as an on-demand webinar on the resources page at Opsgenie. And you can also combine incoming and outgoing and create what we call bidirectional links. Actually, the first use case I'm about to show is an example of this. It combines both incoming and outgoing way of extending Opsgenie. So to summarize, before going into the use cases, we use AWS Lambda with Opsgenie because it requires no resource provision, no need to configure servers, and it's pretty trivial to deploy. You don't pay if you don't need to take actions, and it can easily scale in case of an alert overload. It simply just works and requires almost zero maintenance. And also be aware of that you can also use Opsgenie's CloudWatch integration to get an alert if you have a problem within AWS Lambda. And this means you have simple monitoring and alerting pipeline defined for your code with no further effort or no additional tools. All you need is to set up the integration of Opsgenie. We will have a webinar next week about Opsgenie along with AWS's CloudWatch and CloudTrail service. So you might want to check that out as well. And now let's talk about some use cases. So before going into the use cases, do we have a question, Sean?
No questions in the question box yet, but if anyone on the line has a question, now's a great time to ask, or we can dive in. So I think, Sarat, yes, you can continue right along, yeah?
Okay. Feel free to ask questions. And now I'm going to talk about some use cases. And the first one is we have this available in Log Entries community GitHub account. So as usual, we have integrated Opsgenie with monitoring tools like New Relic and Datadog. And we get these tools creates alerts and Opsgenie. So you define an Opsgenie webhook integration, and when an alert is created, Opsgenie triggers an HTTP endpoint you created. And this HTTP endpoint, in our case, is created by using AWS API Gateway service. And when API Gateway receives the request, it passes the payload to AWS Lambda function. And within the AWS Lambda function, we write a code based on the alert payload. We write a code to query the logs from a third-party service you use. For example, it might be log entries. And then once we get the logs related with the alert, we can use Opsgenie's API to attach the file back to the alert. And this way, we enrich the alert, and now Opsgenie users don't need to go to log entries web interface to see the relevant logs. So we reduce the context switching, and you can see what is important immediately without further trouble. So again, we have the code available, and you can go and check it out. Also, if you have a question, again, you can ask on community.opsgenie.com. And another example is that I created is also published in HackerNoon. So this is a Slack example. Slack has something called unfurling, which simply means like if you in the first one you share a link you want to unfurl, and Slack Events API makes a request to your API Gateway endpoint. Again, we use Amazon's API Gateway service. And API Gateway service passes the payload to Lambda function. And in this Lambda function, we have this message from Slack, and this Slack message includes a URL that you want to unfurl. And again, then this link, from this link, we extract for example, this link is an Opsgenie alert link, and then we extract the alert ID, and we go to Opsgenie and request the alert details. And we get the alert details back from the Opsgenie API, and we update the original message with more details. So simply, unfurling is you share a link in Slack, and we get the link and get the important information from a third-party tool like Opsgenie, and update the message in Slack to give it more meaning, to make it more to enrich it, and to make it easy to understand without clicking the link. And also the code and all the configuration required to make this happen is available in the blog post and on GitHub. So the example that we are going to use in our demo is this one. It's pretty trivial. That is one of the reasons that why I chose this example. So in this example, we are going to receive a message from Slack. And in this message, if the message starts with Opsgenie, for example, and we can determine the keyword here, Slack is going to make a request to the endpoint we provided. And the endpoint we provided is the API Gateway's endpoint. And the API Gateway will pass the data to AWS Lambda function. And within the AWS Lambda function, what we will do is to simply create an alert, which is pretty straightforward and trivial by using Opsgenie's API. And today I'm going to use Node.js, and we have a Node.js SDK, and so you don't have to use third-party libraries, and you can just say Opsgenie.create, and it will create another. So it will be, as we will see soon, it is pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go to the demo, but before I do that, Sean, if we have a question, I can answer it right now.
Yeah, nothing yet. So we'll, I think we'll go right to the demo.
Okay. So first one is Slack has this outgoing webhooks, and I created a new webhook, and in this webhook you are going to see a page like this, and it says we need to choose a trigger word, as I told you earlier. So we are going to choose Opsgenie, and I'm going to show you how we get this one. But we have a HTTP endpoint from AWS API Gateway service, and we have a Slack token that we will use to verify that the request comes from Slack. And we have updated the logo and did some options, and we save settings. And in Opsgenie, we will use Opsgenie's API integration to create an alert. So back to the integrations page, I simply went to the add new integrations and chose the API integration, and this is the integration we have. So we have the API key, and we are going to use this to within the AWS Lambda function to call the API. And also, just to be like to separate this from other integrations, I added this prefix from Slack. So you can use alert fields to add additional details. Like, for example, I added this Slack tag so that I can query these messages later. And you can also use the payload to update your Slack, for example, alerts message. And now let's go to the AWS console, or let me show you how it works before I go to the code. So I installed the application here in this channel that I created. So if, for example, I don't write Opsgenie, of course nothing happens. But if I say Opsgenie and, for example, there's a latency, let's say, and we're going to see that okay, I'm going to reload the code. Oh, okay, sorry, I'm in the wrong channel. So I'm in the custom solution channel right now. It should now let's say Opsgenie. There's a latency, so I installed the Slack app, Opsgenie's official Slack application here. So as you can see, an alert is created immediately, and as you can see, the prefix is also added automatically from Slack, and the tag also added as Slack. So now let's go back to the code, and we will make a small update, and we will see that it's automatically updated immediately without doing anything. So if we just need to update the code. And in AWS console, it has a pretty simple and easy to use UI and an integrated development environment. So again, this code is available on our GitHub account, and it's pretty straightforward. So we use Opsgenie's SDK, Node.js SDK, and in the functions, the data from API gateway service is passed to here. So once we get the data, we check that we confirm that the request received comes from Slack, and if not, we just return it and say email request. And if it's really coming from Slack, so we configure our Opsgenie SDK, and we have this simple create alert JSON that we specified how alerts should be created, what it should include. And then we use Opsgenie's SDK to create the alert. We just say Opsgenie.alert version 2.create, and we pass the payload, we pass the data object to that function. And if it returns successfully, we just we just finish the job, and also we write some log statements so that we can see if something happens or if it's successful or not later. And we have this package JSON, so we have Opsgenie's SDK defined here, and an important one that we can see here is, I'm going to switch the console. So we have this to deploy the code. We have this serverless. We are using serverless.js deployment framework. It's pretty easy. So I'm going to show you the configuration here. So I need to say that I'm using AWS as a provider, and I'm in the US West 2 region. I'm using Node.js 4.3 version, and I have as an environment variable, I want to pass this Slack token that I got from the Slack's configuration page here. I get this by default, and I paste it here. And I also created an Opsgenie integration, so I pasted here as well. And I have one simple function My function is named as select Opsgenie alert creator, and I added some description. And once the function is called, I wanted to call the function main.handler, which you can see from here. We have the main.js and the handler method. So let's go back to the Lambda, Lambda console, and sorry, I want to show you also this one. So we have, to create the HTTP endpoint, we also have the events. So it's an event. If it's an HTTP event, serverless.js will automatically create an HTTP endpoint using the AWS API Gateway service. And I want it to become to get the request as a post request, and because we are going to create something. So also I wanted the endpoint to be select to Opsgenie alert create. So after entering these details, we just need to say serverless deploy, and it will automatically package your application and create a zip file and upload it to the AWS Lambda service. And as you can see, it's right now uploading. It's pretty lightweight, so it shouldn't take long. Underneath is using CloudFormation, so it's updating this stack right now. It's already deployed. I'm just doing this to show you that we are going to receive the API endpoint after this, after saying serverless deploy. Then we are going to use, as you can see, we have the endpoint. Once you the first time you do this, you are going to copy this, and you're going to need to go to outgoing webhooks and paste it here so that Select knows where to make the HTTP request. And that's also, let's go to the code again here. So for example, let's say I don't want to just pass the text I received from Slack, and maybe I want to add some additional details. Like, for example, I want to determine the priority here, and let's say is P1, and for example, I want to add some responders by default for this integration. And you can see the if you don't know the syntax, you can just go to Opsgenie's documentation and read the API documentation. And for example, I have an ops team, for example, and I need to say the type that I'm gonna use here is a team, and I'm gonna use name, not the ID, because for example, I don't know the ID. Let's say ops team. And what I need to do is just click save. And if I type this correctly, once I again go to Slack and here, I'm gonna close this one. If I go to this channel and okay, it's closed by the way. And if I go to this channel and now if I say to Opsgenie and let's say there's a problem, and the new, as you can see, the new alert, and we can also see it from the Opsgenie's alert page, for example. As you can see, there's a latency. This is the, I'm sorry, this is the old one. Okay, as you can see, it's automatically priority 1 because we updated the code. And as you can see, it's again automatically assigned to the ops team, which is pretty cool because what we needed to do is just add these fields and just click save. And it's again pretty straightforward. And if it doesn't work, for example, you can just go to CloudWatch and you can click logs, for example, and you can filter your function. And this is our function. As you can see, it's here. And if you go to the logs, and you're going to see that we we had this alert creating response to success. And if it's an error, again, you can see the why it fails here. So that's pretty much about it. So Sean, if you have a question, it's a great time to just answer some of them.
Yes, now would be a good time. If anyone does have questions, send them over. So if there's other specific examples that you guys are working on with AWS Lambda that you want, that Serhat could help with, now is a great time to ask those questions as well. Serhat, I'll take control back for a second, and then we can always switch it back if when questions come in here.
Okay.
Let me do that.
Also, feel free to ask about, for example, Merit or API or webhook integration. And I know that we covered a lot of them in our previous webinars. And but again, if you have a question, you can ask right now, or you can just write me from my Twitter account or on community.opsgenie.com.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and also just a couple more pieces of information for everyone on the line. So I think the next steps, definitely to go out and try to test this stuff. If you're an AWS Lambda customer and you're obviously an Opsgenie customer, playing around with some of the stuff that Serhat just showed us is a good next step. And everything, I think all the code, Serhat, if I'm correct, is in GitHub there with a link, so you can reach out at any time to use that. Or if you want any more help, you can check out some of our upcoming webinars as well. And one thing I did want to do, I'm going to put a poll up because we're always curious what topics, particularly more technical topics, our audience is interested in. And there's been a lot of interest lately with AWS services. As Serhat mentioned, we're doing a webinar next week for anyone out there using CloudTrail and CloudWatch with Opsgenie and how that integration works. I just want to throw a quick poll on the screen. If you could vote, it'd be helpful for us just to understand, where can we provide more information on particularly AWS and how it integrates, and you can use these services with your Opsgenie account. So if you could vote anything that's of interest to you, we can make sure that we're creating content and answering questions in the areas that the audience cares about. All right, so we got a bunch of people looking for CloudWatch information, so you guys should definitely go to next week's webinar because that's what we're talking about. CloudTrail as well, EC2, good. So there's a bunch of interest there. All right.
And again, also more and more tools are creating alerts in AWS. So if you don't have the tool, here, feel free to write us from the chat, or just you can send it to it.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I was limited on how many tools I could list there, so I listed off the top 5 or 6. But if there's another tool, please put it in the chat box, or you can tweet at Serhat and he'll make it known. All right, so I'll close this down. Thanks for the information there. Okay. All right, and then just quick before we go. So what's new? So keeping kind of the integration front going. So Opsgenie, we're all about our integrations. We've got 200 of them at this point. Many of them are bidirectional. New ones that you should know about, if you're a Dynatrace customer, Lightstep, doing really cool monitoring. We've got some cool customer stories coming up where customers using Lightstep and Opsgenie to do some really interesting work. GitLab and Azure are all new, and there's all documentation. So if you're customers of those tools or you have questions about those tools, you can ask us now or ask us later. And I don't have a link to it yet, but soon I will, and you'll see it on the website, and we'll tweet about it. Opsgenie plus CloudWatch and CloudTrail. So, kind of telling the story of how our customers are using CloudWatch and kind of syncing and consolidating alerts between the two and logging things, and also using Opsgenie to kind of consolidate that noise. So that's the 13th. That's about a week out. That'll be our next webinar that we host. And there's a couple people asking if we're getting the webinar recording. You can, yep, absolutely. So we're recording all of this. So we're going to send the webinar. Typically, the webinar recording will go out, tomorrow morning, East Coast time. So you'll get that in your email. Watch for that, and it'll also be posted on the website in our resources section, so you can't miss it. And then just some more resources. So GitHub, our resources page, like I mentioned, we've got a whole engineer. I don't know, Serhat, if you have anything to add to the engineering post here, but I know we've got a whole bunch of content that we talk about serverless and good resources for the audience, right?
Yes, exactly.
yeah, in the Hacker Noon article that you posted as well, that you shared. So with that, I will check one last time. Yep. So yeah,
I'm gonna also share the deck on the speaker deck account. So and send it to it. So so that you can reach the resource links.
Perfect. Exactly. All right. Good. So we'll share that out. Yeah. So last call for questions. Doesn't look like we have any. We got a thank you from Jason. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for checking it out. And yeah, everyone seems eager to get the decks and the information. So we'll make sure you guys have all that at your fingertips, and please, let us know at any time. As you probably know by this point, in the bottom right corner of the website or in the app, we've got the little intercom widget. You can chat with us anytime. One of our support agents will get back to you. A real human will get back to you in real time and help you out. So with that, I'll say thank you. I'll check one last time. No other questions. And yep, thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Sujoy, for joining us. And Serhat, thanks for hosting, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you guys. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Bye.